think people find it so like mad and so like obscure that people don't want to know anything about it, don't want to hear about it, don't want to learn about it, don't want to speak about it. It's too depressing, which I understand. But it's reality, and there's lots of nice things in between. Like some of my most happiest times have been in Ukraine, and like, I mean, I've gone out for barbecues, gone swimming in a pool as the city's getting bombed, and you know, we can hear it, but we're still trying to. Kids are jumping in the pool, having the best time. When actually they're having to go like run in the basement now half the time. They're coming back out and then going back in the pool. I mean, people still have to try and live a life. Like, we can't just say, well, that's a war zone, there you go, that's it, ta-ra, because their life's never going to heal, do you know what I mean? It's actually Ukraine that inspired me to become a journalist. So I've always done, like, charity work. I've always been quite, like, compassionate and just really bothered by stuff that's happening worldwide. So I've always tried to help people in one way or another, mainly through charity work. And then about 6 years ago, actually, I was looking into children in orphanages in Ukraine. So there's a lot of children there because of the Chernobyl disaster. And so I just decided I was going to go one day. Took two guys with me, two friends of mine. They're rappers. We did music workshops with some kids in orphanages, brought them donations and stuff. And then, I just fell in love with the country, really. And then I learned about the war, and it escalated from there. And then I realised that, you know, people weren't really listening about Ukraine because they've been in war since 2014, and, you know, you wouldn't really hear about it in the media. So I thought, well, how can I make people aware? And that's by becoming a journalist. So I went to uni at 27, graduated last year, and I was all inspired because of Ukraine, really. So here I am.
So a rap group, you went over to Ukraine for the first time ever with a rap group?
Yeah, two guys, one guy called BVA from the Four Owls. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah, I've heard of the Four Owls.
And then Rezwan from Split Profits. And I found some, because I was writing for a magazine called Wordplay Mag at the time, which is like a hip-hop music mag. I found some rappers in Ukraine from Wikipedia, actually. Just typed in top 10.
As you do.
Top 10 Ukrainian rap groups. And then I went through their music, found that I liked their music, popped them a message on Facebook, and then they replied within an hour like, yeah, that's a bit mad that you're coming to Ukraine. Don't know why, but yeah, we'll help you. So then we became friends, and they helped me. They helped us sort of set up the orphanages and stuff. They came with us, and yeah, we've been friends ever since. So thanks to Toolin Posse. Go check them out.
Yeah, definitely will. So was that in the Chernobyl area you went the first time, or was it?
Yeah, we went to Chernobyl as well.
Yeah, what was that like?
So we went there. It was pretty hardcore, pretty intense. It was tough as well because we'd just been to the orphanages with these kids that sort of have radiation-related diseases. You can't pinpoint that it's from there, but more than likely. So we were in orphanages with like 150 kids with all different kinds of disabilities, were really, really sick, you know, not well at all. And unfortunately, you know, the human rights in Ukraine isn't exactly the best. And if you have a disability, you're kind of hidden in the shadows, really. So you get put into these things called institutes, internats, they call them. And so after seeing all these kids, these beautiful kids, and then going to Chernobyl and seeing sort of what has impacted their lives forever, really, it was quite, it was tough, really tough.
When you, when myself personally, I look at Ukraine, obviously it was part of the Soviet Union and stuff, but I always think of like this dark, dingy place where like it's very depressing, the people are quite hard-faced. Is that what it lives up to be?
Ukraine's beautiful. I mean, obviously its aesthetics is kind of Soviet Union. So, you know, the buildings, they look very different to ours. But I find that really interesting. I kind of like, it does look a little bit, it's not like what you'd see in London, for instance, or anywhere in the UK, really. But the people are beautiful. They're so welcoming. And, you know, Ukraine is really, really a beautiful country. Beautiful country. There's loads to see. Obviously, you know, it's horrible what's going on there now. They've got beautiful mountains there, Carpathian Mountains. But, you know, would suggest people to go on holiday to Ukraine. Maybe not right now, but Kyiv is always like a beautiful place to go. You can go swimming. It's super cheap. So, it's a beautiful place.
Yeah. And did anything in your childhood kind of mould you to do what you're doing right now?
I don't know. It's a tough one, isn't it? Because there's so much that you can go through in life that, like, everything sort of pushes you to that direction. So I used to take pictures. I've always taken pictures since I was young. I mean, I lived in Belgium till I was 1, Germany till I was 5. So we've always like travelled around. So me and my sister have always been quite like fearless in terms of going abroad has never sort of We've never questioned anything really.
Intimidated.
Yeah, never been intimidated by exploring the world really. My mum's always been like quite passionate about people who are less fortunate than ourselves, you know, so she's always pushed us to go and help people where we can and like not to be afraid of the world because everyone's just people in the end of the day and we just live in one little bubble together. But of course, people have different sort of outcomes in their day-to-day life.
Yeah, and in school, did you do anything? You know, did you want to be anything else when you was in school, or?
Yeah, I never really knew what I wanted to do. I was a nightmare in school, ADHD as hell. So I'd always be shoved in the corridor. Had a mentor all the way through school. You know, I had to sign contracts with the school to say I'd behave, otherwise they'd be kicking me out. Never got kicked out of school, but was never let in the classroom. Not often anyway.
Yeah.
And then I started traveling because I had no idea what I wanted to do. I think I just had loads of energy that I just wanted to burn, really. I didn't know where I was going to go. I've tried loads of different jobs. Like I was a lifeguard for years, swimming teacher. I've taught refugees in Germany. Done all sorts of weird and wonderful things.
Yeah.
But that's all kind of, like you said, it probably has amounted to where I am now because I've met so many people, been so passionate. The kids I taught in Germany are beautiful, you know, straight from Syria and Afghanistan and Libya, and they've gone through horrendous things. So all my jobs have always kind of been working with people, I suppose. And then, yeah, it's just sort of escalated to where I am now. But I never knew what I wanted to do. And even when I said to my parents, I'm going to go to uni at 27, I thought, fucking hell. They said, you're not going to stay though, are you? Because I was just a nightmare. I didn't know what I wanted to do or where I was going to go. Or I'd always change my mind. I'd never finish projects. And then, it was the best thing I ever did, really.
Yeah, what was the final decision for you to say, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life?
I think because I'd been focusing so much on Ukraine in my free time, that clearly was something that I was passionate about. And it was the only thing, you know, looking at Syria as well and Afghanistan and stuff, you know, looking into war-torn countries and the impact on people has always been the thing that I've always looked into and always like researched in my own time.
Yeah.
So I thought, look, this is the one thing I've been actually really dedicated to. So I thought it's the right decision. I wasn't sure at the time I was going to stick it out, but going to uni late, you know, I never went to uni before, but it was the best thing I did, absolutely.
So you've recently come back. How long ago have you been back now?
I've been back. I was there for the whole month of June.
So you've been really in the thick of everything that's going on.
Yeah, so the last sort of 6 years been going back and forth, always on the front line, and I'm normally embedded with a medical battalion called Hospitaliers. That's their flag by there. They've always been, you know, really welcoming, always looked after me. Yeah, and I've been lucky to have the access that I have because there's a bit of a media blackout there, and it's quite hard for journalists to sort of be accepted or be shown places. And, you know, there's a lot of many different reasons why people don't want journalists there. But I've been quite lucky that I've built up enough trust with them and people in Ukraine for a long time that I've got a lot of contacts. So, you know, yeah, so I was pretty much straight in the thick of it.
And 6 years ago, could you foresee what was happening right now? Is this not a surprise?
Not a surprise, really. No, it was bound to happen at some point. I wasn't sure when, but in January, when I was there in January this year, that was the first time when I said, you know, shit's going to kick off, really, because I was right on the front line. And, you know, we're so close, you can smell the cigarettes and hear the Russian troops. And it was really quiet. So I've been to that position a few times, a place called Vodna, which is closer on the front line than Mariupol is, which is where the Azov steel plant is. And yeah, it's always been quite noisy. It's always like gunfire and stuff back and forth.
Yeah.
But in January, it was the quietest it'd ever been. And everyone said it was the calm before the storm. So, you know, it was, if I could tell that something was going to happen, then the rest of the world should have known, really, especially politicians. Should have done something about it sooner if they could have.
Yeah, well, this is what I was going to ask you, because you obviously still kind of work with ITV and stuff, and a lot of people would say, you know, that we knew, you know, and maybe the narratives that get fitted are kind of off track to what's actually happening. Working within ITV and then being outside there, do you see there's a contrast with what's being portrayed on the media with what's actually happening?
Yeah, definitely. Unfortunately, the media is a bit of a beast. That's why I like to be independent. Like ITV they've always been good to me and they've always looked after me, and like they're a great organization to work for. But generally, the media, they want to sell what makes money, not necessarily what always is going on. That's why no one was really interested in Ukraine until now. Obviously, the escalation happened this year, so it's a much bigger war than it was. But, 20,000 people did die before February.
Yeah.
So it's not that it wasn't happening. So, one thing that does bother me is that a lot of mainstream media said the war began in February. Well, it's not true.
The invasion.
So there was the escalation began in February, but there was a lot of people who've been affected by war since 2014. And that's something that isn't really portrayed in mainstream media. It's just easy for them to say the war started in February. So that's a misconception from a lot of people that actually, there was war way before this. Of course, it wasn't at the scale of what it is now. It's much, much bigger scale, of course. But, they have been in conflict since 2014.
Would you say this is where your heart lies then with Ukraine? Because I know you've done other projects. Could you just name some of the things you've done and I was going to say journalised on, but kind of, reported on?
Yeah, so there's a big mixture of stuff, really. So Lebanon's also been a focus of mine since the blast, 2 years, a couple of years ago, or a year ago. So Beirut has always been, or 2 years ago, sorry, has been an interest of mine. I've done a lot of sort of investigative work in terms of Afghanistan. So I have spoken to some sort of ISIS members and things like that. But because I don't have the full training. To be honest, the reason why I was going to Ukraine, first of all, also because I love the country, but in terms of, it was kind of the easiest war in terms of, but then I was unprofessional, didn't really know what I was doing. It was the safest war in the weirdest sense to go to. So I've done a lot of work from the UK. So mainly looking into Lebanon, Syria, Afghanistan. Shot a documentary last year in Denmark, sort of looking at Syrian refugees that are being sent back to Syria and things like that. So it's mainly sort of Middle East and Eastern Europe I've been focusing on. But it just turns out that because I've gone to Ukraine so much, it just turns out that that is what people might call my expertise, is Eastern Europe. So that's just how it's ended up. But I am looking now in December to go to Lebanon and maybe Syria as well.
You excited?
Mixture of both. I mean, there's people I've worked with in Lebanon for a couple of years now, some journalists. I'm looking forward to working with them. When I get there, we're already putting some plans. Of course, I enjoy doing my projects, but the reality is that it's not very nice. And you see a lot of horrible things and hear a lot of horrible stories and heartbreaking stories. And often you think the journalism's in vain. I feel like journalism's in vain sometimes because it's up to the people who you're telling the stories to, whether they're going to listen. And even if you do shout about it, it doesn't mean that people are going to do anything about it or help or even trust what you say, really. So, so I am looking forward to going to Lebanon. A bit nervous about going into Syria. We'll see if I actually make it in there or not. There's some areas that are safe and some that aren't. Of course, if I'm going to go to the areas that aren't, and I'll be going with a Lebanese journalist as well. So we'll see if I make it in there.
Do you think it takes a certain somebody to do the things you're doing? Because you are literally risking your life every day when you're out there. I
think, you can either handle it or you can't really. It's important for people to know that there's a lot to think about, and you do have to be a sort of person. I don't really know what that sort of person is. Maybe stupid, maybe. But I mean, when you see families and stuff there, kids and things, running around in war zones, all that fear kind of goes away. I'm more scared before I go and after I've gone. After I've gone is when it sort of impacts me. When you're there, you're surrounded by it, so there's no time to digest exactly what's going on. Yeah. There's no time to be calm, relax, or actually reflect on, because you're surrounded by war and you're surrounded by people who live with it every day. So I can't really be this sort of person to say, oh, this is terrible and scary, because I'm the one that's decided to go over there.
So is it when you come back home and you're like, what the fuck, I've just been there? And
yeah, that's when it sort of all sinks in. But you've probably, in terms of certain people, I don't know how you think, what sort of person I am, but
no, I was just wondering. It's just you look at some of these journalists who have been captured and killed, and you'd think it's probably 1 in a million, but it's really not. It happens quite a lot, don't it?
Yeah, It does happen a lot because at the end of the day, wars are quite rogue as well. So people can get away with doing all sorts of things. Like even I've reported from the Ukrainian side, I've tried to be as fair and non-biased as possible, but I have been pulled aside by the secret services. They have hacked my phone, the Ukrainian SBU. My friend, like I said earlier, my friend the other day, he was captured by the SBU as well. The Ukrainian secret services, they were going through his phone, taking pictures of his Tinder profiles, all the people he'd been chatting to on Tinder.
Why do you think they do that?
Because there's a lot of Russian saboteurs. A lot of them use Tinder to find out from, and Ukrainians do it as well. So because some people are silly and talk about where they are, what they're doing, they might think they're chatting to somebody who they're flirting with, but actually it's someone from secret services, and they say, oh, I'm on the front line, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and then they know exactly where they are.
So
I think
in reality, like what you're trying to say is that Tinder is being infiltrated in a kind of warfare.
Yeah, it is. It is absolutely. It is absolutely. And a lot of Russian positions, not a lot, but there's been a few Russian positions which have been exposed because Russian soldiers have been thinking they're chatting to some pro-Russian girls, for instance. And they've sent pictures to their Tinder matches. Oh, this is me and the guys. Well, then they know exactly what battalion they are because they might have their patch on. Or in the picture, there might be a sign of a street sign in there, or there might be a lamppost which is only like from a certain area. Or there's loads of little things where you can find like where people are just from a picture.
Yeah.
Even the way that a building, shape of a building, for instance, can give you away your position. So there's been a few Russian soldiers, who have given away their positions, and perhaps Ukrainians as well, where they've sort of been.
But what are they? Are they expecting to meet someone in this war zone? Are they?
Well, yeah, probably. But because in the end,
it's mad, isn't it?
It is mad. But I guess they have to have some sort of normality as well. So,
stimulation.
So people do normal things as well, like
escapism and stuff as well.
Yeah, so people do normal things in between
the
madness. And don't forget, some of these people haven't seen anyone for a long time, so they're obviously just bored as well.
Yeah, well, this era especially of warfare is different to even 20 years ago, 40 years ago, when you've got like the likes of TikTok, and you only have to go on TikTok. I remember when the invasion first happened, you couldn't avoid scrolling through without seeing
absolutely
Russian soldiers doing TikTok dances in trenches, and it's just like it's crazy,
It's a mad world. It's a mad world, but that's also why they're quite paranoid about journalists, because, as I said, with pictures, you can give away so much in a picture.
Yeah.
So you have to trust the person that's taking the photo, that they're not going to post it as it is. There's lots of pictures I have to pixelate, loads of stuff. Buildings, even trees, pixelating the trees, the buildings. There's lots of pictures I can't release yet because they'll just give away people's positions. So there's lots of stuff which, there has been journalists that have posted pictures, and then, they're at a medical base and they've given away the position. Then the next day, they've been bombed because the Russians have seen, or vice versa, Ukrainians have seen Russians, they see the picture and they know exactly where they are. So, people's lives are in your hands, so you've got to be really careful. But obviously, like you said, with phones and stuff, everyone's filming everything at the minute, so...
and being a journalist, of course, you're raising awareness at the end of the day, and you do your good deeds in between now with like the aid and probably giving out food and stuff to vulnerable people in these war-torn areas. But as yourself, would you say you do this to help others, or do you do it for the buzz, or do you do it to actually raise awareness?
I do it to actually raise awareness, but of course, I don't think anyone could really be in a war zone, or at least for a job, because it is only a job in the end of the day. And that if you didn't have if you couldn't sort of handle it or have some sort of buzz off it.
It's like a bit of both, yeah.
But it's certainly not. There's people that do go out there, it's just for the buzz, and they're always the ones that are going to be killed first, because you've got to be really careful.
Yeah.
So, when it comes down to it in the end of the day, I do put my life on the line, and it is about the kids and the fact that, there's so many lies and propaganda, and, with world wars everywhere, we're lucky to live in a world where that's so far removed from us, but a lot of the world doesn't have that really. So my passion has always been, for the kids.
Being over there, have you come into contact with any Russians yourself, or?
The only Russians I've come in contact with are the people that are fighting for Ukraine. One of my good friends, he's Russians from Moscow. he left Russia 8 years ago to come fight for Ukraine. He was actually a medic. He was working for the hospital years now. He works for the SOF. And yeah, he's a medic. But now he can't get Ukrainian citizenship. And they're talking about him maybe having to leave to go back to Russia. But if he goes right back to Russia, it's not going to be good for him. All his family, yeah, it's messy. All his family have wiped their hands of him because they're Russian. So I have met Russians, but they're the ones fighting for Ukraine in terms of Russian troops. If I came across Russian troops, I probably wouldn't be sat here right now. So I'm glad that I haven't. But I've seen them. They've only been a few hundred meters away is the closest. I think about 300 meters away was the closest, yeah.
And, you know, the Ukrainians, how would you describe them as an army? You hear they're fearless, but how would you describe them?
Yeah, fearless is a great word. They're really really passionate. This is this has been going on for centuries now. You know, Ukraine fighting for independence. So this is all the way through their history, from living memory. It's always been trying to have Ukraine being their own country without sort of being controlled by Soviet or Russia. And so. Yeah, I'd say passionate, fearless. I mean, they're really lovely, hilarious people, and they've got really dark jokes, but they're going to have dark jokes to get through the day, I guess. But yeah, they're hard to describe, but I mean, they're just amazing. They're really.
And you hear all this. Excuse me. You're hearing like that. You see these videos as well of like the Russians who were being captured. It's like half of them don't even want to be there. What's the word on the ground like? What's the score? Yeah,
the word on the ground basically is that they don't really, a lot of them for sort of just, gathered up, said they're going to go training, do a month of training, and then next minute they're on the front line in Ukraine. They don't really know what they're there for, what they're doing. There's others that do know exactly what's going on and loot, rape people. There's some really, people know exactly what's going on. But a lot of Russia, mainland Russia isn't big cities and things, so they haven't got as easy access to the outside world. So they're fed a lot of propaganda, a lot of state TV, a lot of state radio and things like that. There's other Russians. So I met this sister. She's like a surgeon sister. She'd operated on some Russians, my friends. They'd evacuated. They actually were in gun battle with some Russians. They shot the Russians and then they wanted to help them because they don't actually want people to die. And, Ukrainians and Russians have got family and friends in both countries. So they always felt that they were like brothers and sisters. But yeah, so she was operating on some Russians and she just asked them, what are you doing here? And they said, look, we're snipers. We're getting paid 57 euros a day, which their average wage is about 200 to 300 euros a month, really, in Russia. So if you're getting paid 57 euros a day, they're gonna do whatever. And life is a bit bleak in some places in Russia. So, this is their way to try and make their life better. But obviously it's at the hands of other people's lives, really. So
they're being paid well to
to
kill their neighbours.
Yeah, and a lot of them don't really know why they're there or what they're there for, really. So it's quite sad. I do feel for some young Russian kids because there's 17, 18-year-olds that don't know why they're there, what they're doing, and their lives are ruined, and they've ruined other people's lives. So
yeah, there's been some offences recently, haven't they? With Ukraine, they've been pushing back some areas in Russia, and I think it was yesterday or the day before they've uncovered those mass graves in
Izium.
Yes, it's horrific what we're hearing, and that's on mainstream media. What are some of the things you've seen?
Some of the things I've seen is a lot of injuries, mainly injuries. Only seen one person that had died, but mainly injuries. Most of them have been from landmines. There's been a couple of grenades and things, but yeah, most have been landmines. So that's missing limbs, legs, arms, feet. A lot of sort of brutal injuries, but there's a lot of stuff that I haven't seen. So lucky, so I've been quite lucky. I mean, I have seen a lot of horrible stuff, but I mean that happens all day, every day there. I've seen sort of people that have been tortured, but as they're being fixed in hospitals. But in terms of evacuations, in terms of fresh injuries that I've seen, they've always been mainly from landmines, some shelling, some shrapnel and stuff. A friend was shot in the head. But the bullet just bounced off his helmets. That's why helmets are good.
Yeah,
That's why
yeah,
helmets are good for you. So he was lucky, and that was the second time he'd been shot. But other than that, yeah, it's mainly landmines and stuff, and they're pretty gruesome injuries. And
Yeah.
they take off your legs. If you're lucky, that's what you're going to get away with.
Yeah. And have you heard yourself of any of these people being tortured like they found in the mass grave? Have you heard any stories of Russians doing these atrocities?
Yeah, so a lot of people I know have had friends or family members that have been sort of tortured. There's a guy called Aidan Aslin. He is from England. He's been captured in Mariupol as well. He was fighting for Ukraine. He has done, I think, since 2016. I don't know how much what they've been doing to him, really. So he's in prison. They've sentenced him to death in these fake, what's called a kangaroo court. So it's like the made-up government that they've made for themselves in the DNR. Who knows what's going to happen to him? He has been sentenced to death, but I would hope that they're not going to kill him. One video that they released looked like he'd been hit on the back, like from the butt of the gun. On his head, you could see that it was like a perfect shape. But I mean, if that's all they were doing to him, then he's lucky. But torture's quite a normal thing out there.
Would you know if they kill him? Are they in like communication or?
Yeah, they use him as a propaganda tool. Really, they use him as a bit of a token. There's him and there's another two, a guy called Sean, and I cannot remember the other guy's name, so I'm very sorry about that. But there's three of them have been captured. I mean, who knows what's going to happen to them? It wouldn't go down well for them if they did execute them, like they're claiming they're going to execute them, because it would be a war crime, because they have been they are officially part of the military, like part of the army and the Marines. They're not sort of rogue militia or whatever, which is the Russians are claiming. The UK government hasn't really done much to help.
So these were part of the British military.
The Ukrainian,
okay,
but Aidan's from the UK, yeah. And the week he got captured, he was supposed to be marrying his Ukrainian fiancée.
What about the stories or the narratives, again, you can say, of the Russians are coming in to save their land from these Nazis and stuff? What would you say? What's that? Is that bullshit? Or?
It's absolute bullshit. Of course, there's Nazis, and there's people that are right wing. There's people that are right wing here in Cardiff. There's people that are right wing all over the UK. So, I mean, look at EDL. Like, we have all sorts. Everywhere has got them. But Ukraine is definitely not a Nazi country. I mean, there's a lot of nationalists that sort of it increased a little bit, because obviously when the countries got invaded, then people are more passionate about saving their own country. But look, I mean, the Russians will push they're the best propaganda machine. Well, I don't know, the best isn't the best word, but they are the elite of propaganda, and they'll push anything they can, really. And there is a battalion called Azov. There's no doubt that there's Nazis in Azov. There's no doubt. I've met a couple myself, but there's a lot of people who are within Azov, but most of Azov is also a lot of people that aren't. They're just a very strong battalion. So there's no doubt that there's some nationalists and right-wing people in Ukraine, but just as the same as there's some here as well. So, and obviously, their voices are going to be heard a little bit louder than normal, because their country's been invaded. So the whole point is that they're passionate about their country. Obviously, I don't agree with anything that they do, but it's not a country full of Nazis or nationalists like people say. It's far, far from it. I mean, the amount of hundreds of people I've met in Ukraine, thousands of people I've met about 4 or 5 Nazis.
Why is it that region then? Is it just like the geographical area of why?
Yeah, it's because it's so close. It's on the border of Russia anyway.
Russia, yeah.
It's on the border of Russia anyway. So they speak, some people speak Russian in the east. So some of my friends are from Donbass region. They speak Russian. So there's a lot of Russian influence, and it's like right on the border. So it's a bit more, should we say, they have more of a Russian influence there than the far west of Ukraine. And I think just geographically, it was just the easiest way, and it was just obviously it's just next door, so they just waltzed on it in 2014. Well, it didn't waltz; it's a lot more complicated than that. But yeah, that's why they took Luhansk and Donbass so quickly. I mean, Ukraine did try fight back in 2014, but unfortunately lots of places have been held by Russia since 2014, like Crimea as well. So
I wanted I want to have a look at this because obviously people will be like, what the hell is this? So what's this saying? This is a...
it's RPG 22. So they're normally single shot. So it's made out of plastic.
And this is usable.
That was used, yeah. So that's already been used.
It's mad, isn't it? How light it is.
Yeah, it is light. Probably with the actual rocket in it, probably wouldn't be so light. But
but what's that? What kind of damage is this going to do?
that could do quite a bit of damage to a tank. It could definitely do some damage to a building. Could definitely kill some people. That I picked up from. I was given that by some of the hospitaliers. You can fire it still. You have to reload it. Pull the black thing down. Yeah.
That little click there would kill people. That's it's mad.
I mean, it's not very good as a journalist to have that.
In trouble, would you?
I probably would, yeah. But
you're different, you are.
I was in the place I said earlier that was like calm before the storm, a village called Vodna, which is right on the front. And the people that have signed it, it's quite sad actually. Some of them have died since signing that.
Bizon from Borisivna.
Yeah.
Love.
So there were some hospitaliers, so medical battalion, some medics there. And when I left, I think it was a few days after, they got quite heavily shelled with rockets and stuff. Just completely like blew up the buildings and stuff. And then they retreated back to Mariupol. And one of them's died, or two of them have died, sorry, and the rest are still captured. One of them's a 20-year-old girl who was an opera singer. She'd only been on the front line for 2 months. She was really young.
She was fighting, was she?
She was a medic.
A medic.
Yeah, so she was a combat medic. So at the time, not many people had, especially medics, didn't have guns and stuff. Now, normally per team, they'll have one person who's got guns, or at least like a couple of people have guns.
They need to protect themselves.
Yeah, whereas before, hospitaliers would never have weapons, but now, as it's escalated, they always have one combat medic with them at least. So,
what about journalists? Are they allowed to have guns?
No, not at all. There have been. We're not allowed to fire now, but there was a time where they tried to give me a grenade because they thought there was actually that was at that location with that RPG. They always have dogs on position. So you'll find a lot of dogs are like left behind by families who need to leave like straight away. So a lot of them like battalions or like adopt dogs and always have dogs in position, and dogs can normally hear rockets and stuff before you. They can hear planes coming before you, and they normally they can let you know of like suspicious people, so often barking. So dogs will always bark before you can hear what actually is going to happen. And these dogs are like really nice unless someone's suspicious. And they started barking. This was like 3 a.m. when I joined them on watch, and they tried to give me a grenade just in case there was someone outside, because they thought they heard someone outside.
Extra manpower, like.
Yeah, but I wasn't going to throw that grenade. I've been given a rocket as well to fire when I was left on there. They went out on special operations.
Why wouldn't you? If it's your life in danger as well, do you think those Russians are going to go, oh no, don't shoot by there, she's a journalist, it's okay,
journalists will always be targeted first.
Of course they would.
Because if the journalist isn't there to tell what's happened, then they can get away with all sorts. So journalists always be targeted first. I mean, if I'm that close to someone anyway, a Russian soldier, then I'm probably not going to last long regardless. But
you won't put up a fight.
No, I think ethically for me, I don't agree with war.
Yeah.
Like, whenever he talks about me having a little bit of buzz off it, but realistically, in the end of the day, I don't agree with war. War shouldn't be happening. Yeah. That's why I'm going to try and make people aware of like the atrocities that happen there. So I don't really want to I don't want to do any damage to someone, even if that means that they're going to kill me. That's not something that I want to do. So I'll just put up my hands and see what happens.
It's like a sense of helplessness, isn't it? It's weird, like it's...
I mean, yeah, you're not likely, with the vest and helmet, it's not really going to help you anyway. Like shrapnel, if there's an explosion, you're likely to get, like shrapnel in you, and it only takes one bit to the neck. Bombs and stuff, cluster bombs and things, they're the biggest They're the biggest problem. Rather than like street fights and gunfire and things like that. It's like big bombs. So it's just all luck. It's literally pure luck.
What are some of the
regardless.
things that like the Russians are using, which are not ethically useful in war?
There's so many. So there's one. This is the biggest.
So the one that
Like
this
bomb
one
I've
that
seen.
sucks people out of their fucking.
There's loads of horror. There's loads of like horrible weapons, and to think that people have built these especially to kill people's mental. But the worst one I've seen is a cluster bomb. So it's like probably like this wide, like this high. I'll send you the picture. And they've got loads of little holes. So cluster bombs always got holes, but this is like the biggest one I've ever seen. And from the holes, it fires either little balls or these little things that the Russians are using this time. Is like they're little darts. They're like pieces of metal. So literally this bomb will hit the ground or like shoot bits of metal before it hits the ground. So little like literally like about this big, sharp, and then obviously just go straight through your body. And this thing can literally land and send stuff for like 5-6K surrounding like circumference. So that's not targeting militaries. You're not supposed to target civilians. But if anyone can use a weapon like that and say, oh, they were just targeting militaries, absolutely mad, because you have no idea where those bits of metal are flying to.
Oh, so it's like exploding before it hits the ground, or?
So it explodes when it hits the ground, but it shoots stuff out before it hits the ground. Some of them shoot. Some of them to shoot stuff as it's hit the ground, but a lot of times they'll like shoot the stuff before it lands. And these things can do so much damage, and you don't know where it's landing. So, and that's the thing, because they're using so much like big weapons, big massive weapons like phosphorus bombs and stuff as well. So you don't know where any of this stuff's going, or who it's hitting, or who it's hurting. So to say they're just targeting military is just ridiculous.
Yeah, some of those bombs I've seen. I think it might have been Kherson, or it was on like the Freedom Square. That one, was it Freedom Square?
Yeah, I think I know.
And it was just like it was just unbelievable. Like you're just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's mad, and you can hit it. You know, like you can feel it for a long way away.
Have you witnessed that then? Like bombs not far off, just
yeah. So one position I was at in June in a place called Orikhiv, which is in the Zaporizhia region, which is more south than Donbass, they were like 300 meters away. So this was the night that they were going to go do special ops. And I was left behind. No, the Ukrainians were off to do, so they just like left me behind on the front line. But we had loads of evacuations then as well, loads of landmines, but it was just constant bombing. So I'd say probably for every 20 bombs that the Russians were sending, because you can tell we were in the middle. So there's a Ukrainian military there, Russian military there, so we're right slap bang in the middle. So you can tell who's firing from which direction, because I know where the Ukrainian positions are. Obviously, it's coming this way. It's the Russian position. So, I mean, it was constant. But for every 20 bombs that Russia were landing, there's about one from Ukraine. But it was just constant. And they were walking in. It was about 300 meters from the house before I left. When we were actually having we had a nice little barbecue one night as well. And the house next door, we had some medics in. I got bombed because of a drone that was flying around. So they use drones to spy on people.
Russia do.
Yeah, Ukraine does as well. Yeah. And so basically they fly around and they can see where people are. So they can fly around the streets and stuff, look through windows and stuff and see where the medics are. And they saw the drone. We heard the drone as well, so we knew it was around. And I don't know if I should say this on the podcast, but I needed a shit really bad. And there's the toilet outside. They always have, mainly in the east, they've got toilets outside. There's a hole in the ground. And it was not well. It was not well at all. But this drone was flying around, and it was not good because I really needed the toilet so bad. But I knew the drone was flying around, so it was kind of like, do I shit myself, or do I risk it and go out there and them see me and them bomb me? But I waited for a little bit, and then when I could hear it, but it was a little bit further away, I just darted. But yeah, an hour later, they did see the medics next door, a few doors down, sorry, and they did get bombed. They shot the drone down, but an hour later they got bombed quite badly. But the house was completely destroyed. But only the guys had some shrapnel in their legs. But other than that, they were lucky.
Do you need a work uniform? Want to start a clothing brand? Or maybe you have a football kit that needs a logo printed? Well, if I was you, I'd get in touch with the Re-Inspire Printing Company down Treforest Industrial Estate for the finest printing and embroidery in Wales. I use them for my custom-made mankini. but you could use them for t-shirts, hats, hoodies, and many, many other things.
Do you run a business in South Wales? Want to branch out to new customers? Then check out the South Wales Business Network group on Facebook. From builders in Bridgend to painters in Porthcawl, this group has members from all industries. Request to join today, where you can promote your company, share your socials and inform others on your Christmas offers and deals. That link again is South Wales Business Network.
Oh,
It's the little things in it which you don't...
Especially being a woman, if you're you have your monthly cycle, it's not easy. It's not easy at all.
It's that matter of life and death, isn't it, with things like that? You don't realise it. Wow, you've just... It's crazy, innit?
Yeah, it was the scariest toilet break I've ever had, let me tell you that.
Did you go to the toilet though?
Yeah, it was fine, yeah.
Oh, cool. Checking. Let's get you some more... we'll have to go and put some more funding in for some more underwear. Where do you think this war is going? Do you think it's not letting up anytime soon, or?
It's difficult to say. I mean, it's great that they're...
By the way, I've taken the vest off. I'm fucking boiling.
They're hot.
And I'm quite big, so like...
They're hot.
Yeah, just drive, like rolling around with them must be killer.
It is hot.
I know
it
saves your life, but...
It does get hot. It does get hot then. Into like loads of places obviously now have been liberated, which has been amazing. The Ukrainians are pushing back, but there's lots of areas. These are areas, the ones that have been liberated are pretty much ones that have been occupied since February, or like, you know, since the escalation this year at least, rather than the last however many years. So there's places right far in the east, maybe Luhansk and Donbass region, which have been Russian occupied. You know, they were giving out illegal passports that don't work anywhere other than Russia. There's some people there's a lot of people that left that sort of believed in this Russian world, not believed, but believe in this new Russian world. And so now they're still there. So, I mean, to liberate those cities is going to be quite hard, I think, like the ones that have been occupied since 2014. It's going to be quite difficult because there's a lot of people pushing back. So there's a city called Avdifika, which I've been to loads. It's been quite prominent on the front line. Got loads it's quite heavily fortified, so loads of trenches and stuff. So it's always been quite difficult for Russians to take Avdifika. So they never have, but it's always been quite heavily, like it's been quite prominent on the front line since 2014. I walk around there like, sort of like every year. Landmines everywhere. But I was there in June. It's actually illegal to go in now unless you're on special military operations or medic operations. But the chief of military for Avdifika, and he's the mayor as well, he gave me permission to go in. So he says that at the time I was the only journalist that had been in for a while, and probably will only be the last journalist that goes in for a long time. So, but it was evacuated, Avdifika, and it's normally full of people, but this time evacuated. But there's about 1,500 people left. So there's a mixture between people with disabilities who are struggling to get out. Yes, there's lots of people who can't get out. I mean, it's not easily accessible. They don't have like even ramps and stuff. It's not like a wheelchair-friendly country, really.
Yeah.
Not at all. It's
quite
definitely not. Yeah, and so to get them out is quite difficult. And then the other people that are left are also pro-Russians, people who believe in this like Russian state. So, you know, we drove into the city. It was mad to see it empty for the first time, because even though it's always been like a big frontline city, it was absolutely demolished this time.
And these cities, like, what are the sizes on them?
So this one's 26,000 people. So it's quite a small city. Well, it's a really small city. And there's loads of like little, really small cities, really.
Because you know, you see on the news now, they're like, yeah, this city's been taken, but they look very like you know, nothing's very heavily densely populated, and you can never really tell if they're big cities or... Yeah,
there's a big mixture. Things like Izium, I'm not even sure how big Izium is, but a place like Mariupol is loads bigger.
Massive,
it's loads bigger. It's a massive city compared to Avdifika, for instance. But yeah, Avdifika then, so we drove in, and it must have been... So there was no one else around. We were in an ambulance. had bulletproof vests in the windows, especially by the driver, because the driver gets shot. If the driver's shot, we can't drive, then we'll all be, we're fucked basically. And yeah, within about 10 minutes of driving into the city, we were getting bombed quite badly. And they were landing about 20 meters, 30 meters away from the road as we were driving, and they were following us. So the only way they would have known that we were there within such a short space of time is if someone had let the Russians know that we were there. And then, so yeah, they just tried to target us. We were going to get out the car, have a walk around, but obviously we just drove straight back out pretty much. And that's a big problem for medics when they're trying to evacuate people. They get targeted. So if we were going to evacuate someone, which that was the idea, and get them out of the city, well, if you're driving to go pick someone up, then and you're being bombed, you can't also risk the people you're picking up as well.
Yeah.
So they just have to leave again. So there's so many stories like that when people have gone to, like, you know, someone with disability, some old lady is ringing to say they need to be collected. And this one guy who was chief of his battalion, he cried and cried, and he's hard faced, this guy, and he was like, you know, I can't really describe him, but I didn't think that any emotion would come out of him. But he was due to do evacuation the day before, and they tried, but then they got bombed from both sides. So they had to turn around, and he hadn't been able to get hold of the people since, because the phone lines are dead. There's no electricity.
She's probably fucking dead, starved to death.
Yeah, I don't know, and that's the thing. They have no running water in a lot of these places, no electricity, so there's no contact with these people, and people are in basements, so then it's hard to find them as well. So they say you normally have about 15 minutes to get in and get out of a city. Well, that's not enough at all. So there's a lot of people that are being left behind. So like Avdifika, we were getting bombed quite badly and getting shelled. And, you know, if that was us trying to get someone out of the city, well, it wouldn't happen. And they'd still be left behind. And then who knows the next time when they're going to be able to get taken out again.
How do you fund this then? If you're freelance, like, do you get paid or?
No,
like,
not at all. War journalists aren't paid much at all. I fund it all myself. So I do make documentaries and stuff in the UK and stuff, you know, the more fun stuff.
And then what, sell them on or like?
Yeah, so I just work as so I'll be paid like per day, because I like to work as a freelance assistant producer, making documentaries and stuff, and I'll just be paid like a normal wage or whatever, just while I do the projects, and I'll save some money then and then go back. Because unfortunately, like I said with the media earlier, it's not the best, and mainstream media won't show what matters. They only show what's going to make the money or what's trending at the time. So, you know, it's always a battle of trying to show what's important, because what's important, people don't really want to see it either. And I understand people don't want to like listen to war all day, every day, but it's important because people are just being forgotten about. And like, like, you know.
So where does most of your work go? Like if you're down on, are you there mainly to just like help people and just like have a chat with them, or do you actually film stuff and like send this footage?
Yeah, I film stuff. I
know your Instagram and ass full of stuff.
Yeah. So my Instagram. Check out my Instagram.
We'll plug it up in a minute. Yeah, what happened on the? I've seen the one video in like you can hear the whistling of the waters.
That's from Avdifika. Yeah, that's from Avdifika. Yeah. But yeah, most of my stuff, because also I'm not officially trained either. News organisations are always quite like funky about using people's like work unless like you have proper accreditation and things like that. And
why? It's, what they think is exploitation or something.
It's just that, like ethics really, in terms of from their part, they don't want to like they don't want to be seen to promote people just going off onto the front line and just doing silly things, because people are silly and stupid as well, and they think that for their TikToks and that, and people don't realise it is serious. You need to be like on the ball all the time. You need to know what you're doing. Like you can't faff about, like, it's life or death. And also people are looking after you as well. As a journalist, people always look after you. So if you don't know what you're doing, you can put so many people in danger.
Have you heard any horror stories of anyone who's like gone out there thinking they fucking know the score, but...
Yeah, mostly sort of like medics. Nothing too bad, nothing like where... But since this escalation, there's been a lot of kids from the UK thinking they're the dog's bollocks and they just want to go for a bit of gunfight and they think this and think that. And then they go to the front line and realise it's not exactly what they think it is. So people want to join the Foreign Legion and think that they're going to be saving the world and shooting guns all the time. But it's not like that. War's not like that. Like, you're surrounded by war, but you're not shooting guns and stuff all the time. And
Did you see at the beginning when that guy and his mate and they went to sign up at like the fucking
no, what happened?
I think they went to number 10. Oh, no, they went somewhere and they were like, I'm signing up for Ukraine. But I think he was doing, I got told he was a paid actor, but it was just like, I think he was doing it just to look good.
Oh, people do,
But
honestly.
I bet you get people over there who haven't got a clue.
I met so many kids this time that were like, oh yeah, I come from a kid from Wales, actually. Hopefully he's not watching this. But
Go on, what was he saying?
oh, he's just a right
Give him a
melon. He's
reality
like,
check, go on.
yeah, I did when I was there as well. He was like, "Oh, I just want to shoot." He joined the Foreign Legion. He wasn't as busy
Weirdos,
he wasn't as busy as he thought it'd be. Like, you're not constant gunfire 24/7. That's
He's
not
just
how it
bored,
works.
is he? Fucking
Yeah,
bored.
that's the thing. Like, you sometimes you do sit around for days. Like, you might be hearing bombs, but like it might be landing. Yeah, literally. And he literally said to me, he said, yeah, the thing is, like, we're not getting enough action, so I've joined the hospitaliers. And then he was made into the combat medic. And he was like, I just want to, no, he wasn't a combat medic, but he wanted to be one. He said, I just want to shoot guns all the time. He's 17. He joined the Ukrainian military. He just turned 18, actually, when I interviewed him. But he joined the British Army, left because he couldn't handle it after, like 6 months or something. So did the training, never actually got deployed or anything anywhere, didn't complete his training. And I said, so what makes you think you can handle it here? And he's like, I just want to shoot guns and that all the time. And I was like, this is not how war works. You could literally be sit there for 3 days. Some people never fire a gun. Do you know what I mean? It's not, obviously wars are brutal, but there's kids that get really, really excited about this stuff. And they're the ones that are going to get people killed because they're doing stupid shit.
Yeah, some of the videos I've seen, like of, I think it was the one time when they had all the Chechens.
Yeah.
And we're sending all the Chechens in, and everyone was like, "It's over now." The Chechens are coming.
Yeah.
Like, it's just.
But there's lots of Chechens been fighting for Ukraine for a long time.
I've heard
So
that, yeah.
yeah, so Jediaev Battalion, there was battalion. Oh Christ, what's his name now? Isa Manayev used to run. He was like part of like liberating some of the Chechens. He was like in some military group in the early 90s. And he came to Ukraine and was fighting for Ukraine, but he got killed. But my friend, she was his like right-hand woman. And then that's when she started working for hospitaliers there.
Did he die this time round then?
He died, about 2016, I think. Yeah.
They've had a few big generals. Ukrainians have killed quite a few
Yeah.
generals now, haven't they, in Russia?
Yeah.
It's mad. So do the talk of nuclear war and stuff like that, do you think?
Could happen, yeah. But it's hard to say, really, because the Russians, there's no doubt that they're that brutal. There's no mercy on people. They don't give a shit. So it's not that they wouldn't, because of people, like, of the impact they could do. They absolutely would. It's just whether or not they're physically able to, whether or not they have the manpower to actually do it. Do you know what I mean? But
what's your opinion on Putin? You're not allowed to say.
No, I am. Well, yeah.
You scared?
No, I'm not scared.
No,
come get me.
No, but what?
No, but yeah, no. I mean, horrendous. Like,
Do you think he's getting? People are saying he's got mental health or he's ill in health, and maybe that's why he's doing these things now. And
well, that's like a lot of like world leaders, when they've gotten ill, they like leave with a bang. So it has been like, there's been like other people that have created wars, or at least escalated them to some sort of level, and just created absolute madness before they go, because they want to leave
the legacy.
A legacy, yeah. And to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if the people the Putin that we're seeing on TV isn't even Putin. I'm not saying he's died, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's hidden somewhere.
And
I mean, you look at different videos, well, you look at videos and stuff, and they've got different, deep fakes got different shaped ears, different size ears, and like they're that into.
People think you're crazy to even say that, but the technology we got and everything, it is very, very possible.
Absolutely. If they're using Tinder, do you know what I mean? Like, they're not going to put like, they'll go to any length, and they're the best at it. They've been doing it for years, so they're the best at lying.
Yeah. And
they'll lie to everybody, even to their own people, even to themselves, really. So I mean, like, I'm not saying necessarily there's definitely, an actor, but I wouldn't be surprised if he does have a few that are
lookalikes, 100%.
A few lookalikes that that are doing his
100%.
speeches and stuff for him, and he's not like he's hidden away somewhere.
It's interesting you say about the going out with a bang, and because I've said it before, like it's very similar to, you know, like those people who got STDs or they got AIDS, or I'm not going to say names, but what I'm saying is some people, instead of just getting checked out, they'll give it round to people.
Yeah, what was
knowing
there was like
Gareth
a pot. No, I wasn't going to say that actually.
Gareth Thomas?
There was like a trend, wasn't there, in America? What was it? It was only in like I think it was in the 2000s, late 90s. Pos gang.
Pos gang when they were
So
going
people,
around just...
but people actually wanted to contract as well. So people would literally like meet up with each other, especially to contract AIDS, and it became like a little trend where people were just like giving it to each other for fun.
Well, I weren't going that deep into it, Jess, but I was saying, like, you know, some people, you know, if they've got something, instead of just, you know, raising awareness on the fact and being an advocate, they think, fuck you, you're having it as well, and they will put it about like they do. And I think that's the same mentality of a world leader like Kim Jong, Putin, those type of people. If they're on the deathbed, they want to go down in the history books. Well, if I'm going, you're going as well. Like, do you know what I mean? Okay, well, listen, it's been great talking to you.
It's been great to see you.
Where I've got like one or two questions I want to ask you, and so where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
It's a hard question, like, because things are always changing, aren't they? But what I'd like is to be, you know, full-time war reporter. Will always be freelance. I'll always be freelance, but I'd love to be like traveling the world and like bringing light to like the darkest places if possible.
Is it like a certain agency or company you would like to work for?
I mean, not really, because everyone has like their own agendas.
Central Club?
So Central Club, yeah. Yeah, if you're going to
should
send
do
me out
something,
there.
innit?
Yeah, if you're going to send me out
You
there.
should, innit?
Yeah, I will. Yeah, you can send me out to Lebanon in December.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'd be game. I'd be
Would
game
you be
to it with
game?
you. Yeah, definitely.
That'd be sick.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what we need to be doing, really, is getting people out there.
Yeah, I'd be game for that,
Getting the
100%,
stories.
because I'd rather work for like as an independent.
Yeah.
Do you know
But
what I
there
mean?
was
I'd be up
nothing
for that.
like you know, like I want to work for Sky News. There's nothing like that, no?
No. I'll just be walking myself
that in
over there.
mind then.
Thank you.
Okay. Where do you see humanity in the next 5 years?
Fucking hell. What a question. Down the pan. It's already down the pan as it is.
I know.
People can't even bloody put their heating on this winter, and we're bloody paying 100 mil for...
It's bad, isn't it?
I mean, people's cancer treatments have been cancelled on Monday. People's funerals, like I know, like a young kid is being buried, and he died within 6 weeks. He had an illness, and his family can't even bury him on Monday. They're supposed to be his funeral. But anyway, that's something else. But I mean, humanity overall, like, there's always been wars. I'd love to say that the world's going to be a nice, happy place. But it's not that way, unfortunately. It's not that way. There's going to be it's just absolute turmoil. It's absolute disaster, to be honest. I mean, look at Afghanistan. Everyone's forgot about Afghanistan already. It's only been a year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's stuff bubbling up now in Armenia with Azerbaijan and stuff. And
Really?
yeah, so
Talk about that.
There's about 150 soldiers killed. Some ins and outs of what's happened, I'm not quite sure, but I know that's obviously, you know, they're Eastern Bloc sort of countries, and there's
Is that what is that like a religious tension or just?
No, I think it's more like a Soviet historical tension.
Okay.
So I mean, Armenia had Karabakh, which is they had like a 6-week war in 2020. So I don't think it's quite recovered from that. So yeah, then I believe in the last sort of few days, there's been about 150 killed in Armenia, like soldiers. So
it's mad, all that region, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to go to Armenia as well.
Yeah?
I'd love to go to Armenia, yeah. There's loads of places I'd love to go to. So if I can, I just want to keep going and just keep visiting. I can just try and bring light to dark places, because there's so many like amazing people everywhere, and people are so scared. One thing I do want to break down is like, I'm never saying people should go over to a war zone like a stupid. Don't do that. But
Humble yourself
people
in a way.
just don't forget, and don't like. I think people find it so like mad and so like obscure that people don't want to know anything about it, don't want to hear about it, don't want to learn about it, don't want to speak about it. It's too depressing, which I understand. I'm probably like really depressed without even realizing it, because just talk about like death all the time. But it's reality, and there's lots of nice things in between. Like some of my most happiest times have been in Ukraine, and like, do you mean I've gone out for barbecues, gone swimming in a pool as the city's getting bombed, and you know, we can hear it, but we're still trying to. Kids are jumping in the pool, having the best time. Well, actually, they're having to go like run in the basement now half the time. They're coming back out and then going back in the pool. I mean, people still have to try and live a life. Like, we can't just say, well, that's a war zone, there you go, that's it, because their life's never going to heal. Do you know what I mean?
So in a way, you could say, really, we're sat here, we're just talking about the gas bills going up, but look at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And always look at the bigger picture, because sometimes we do look at the bigger picture and think like, oh, well, this kid's starving in Africa. Oh, well, this is going on in fucking Iraq, but we forget about it in a couple of days. We go back to our, you know...
And
our
obviously,
gas bills.
Gas bills. Obviously, like, you know, everyone's problems are relevant, aren't they? So, like, we live in a world where our problems are different problems to where you get from other countries. Everyone's got their own problems. But I just don't want people get so worked up about war zones being this big, scary place. They forget that actually people have to carry on living. People have to take their dog for a walk. People have to bloody go do their shopping. Like, people have to, do you know what I mean? Go out and buy milk for the tea because they've run out of milk. Like, that's all like trivial stuff, but that is stuff that people need to do. So I mean, that stuff doesn't stop. No. Like, so people just want to keep trying to live their life, but people get so scared about war, they just forget that there's actually normal people like also like making a living. What happens to people's jobs? You have to go to work if you can. Otherwise, where are you going to get money from? How are you going to eat? So people have to carry on. So I kind of want to break down those barriers as well. So a lot of my stories are often like trying to make people look as normal as possible instead of like showing this, because on TV you'll see like the worst part of war.
The shock factor.
You'll see, when actually there's, you know, there is a shock factor, but I met an old lady who was really grateful to the UK. People were like supplying weapons and stuff. She bought me an ice cream. So we had an ice cream together in the park. As a granddaughter was having a swing on the swings. That's normal things. The grandma's taking the little... But then the same city, you know, the same house that we were like stood right next to was bombed a couple of days later. The whole place up in flames, you know what I mean? And they spend a lot of the time in the basement. But she's still going to take a granddaughter to the park to go for a swim, for a swing and ice cream, because that's... You got to carry on, haven't you? So...
Yeah. Okay, and so if there's a moral to this whole podcast, what would you say it is?
Be kind to people. Don't forget that there's other people that aren't in your bubble that are going through stuff as well. And try to reach out, and even if it's just listening and reading, means a lot. Like, you don't have to do anything. If you can't, if you haven't got... I know a lot of people don't have like the emotional capability or anything to do stuff, but if you can just pay attention to everywhere in the world, then just try to raise awareness and like never stop speaking about these countries, because you don't leave little kids behind, really.
No, 100%. Oh, do you know what? I've really enjoyed this podcast, you know. Got to stick a helmet on, got to shoot a bazooka, got to wear a fucking bulletproof vest. Do you know what I mean? Do you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was lush. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Anything you think we didn't get off your chest?
Well, there's probably a lot. I bet you as soon as we finish now.
Yeah, it always happens. We're like, we'll do a part 2. I do it with everyone. Is it, you know, a message to the people watching, if you want to raise awareness or anything like that. Also, plug your Instagram and stuff as well.
So my Instagram, daily, DALY_operation. Appreciate if you follow me, because I'm not making any money. And I need to carry on doing what I care about. But yeah, a big shout out to Dave Shaw, Concrete Junglist, and everyone who supported me, bought my t-shirt, funded my vest and my helmet. Appreciate you all and everyone that supported me over the last few years. I'm grateful to you. Yeah, big up Kesto for the space again, as always. Big up Big Keza. My brother Bear. Yeah. Shout out to Harrison as well, just sitting there. I might as well big up everyone, like, you know, but... Shout out to Harrison lounging and on the cam. Yeah. Shout out to you as well. Yeah. We'll see what we can do, 100%. Yeah, I'd love to. You know, we're broke as fuck right now, but we can try and do something. Sure. Yeah, but I'd be happy to fund my side if you want to like work together on it in terms of like you editing. And like I'm happy to pay for myself to go out there, do you know what I mean? Yeah, we'll see what we can do as well. We'll try and muck in. I think it'd be really good. 100%. It's all about raising awareness and working together, isn't it? Was that right though? Because there was no like sad stories, was there? What?
in this?
Yeah,
It's
like
fine.
it wasn't like
It's good. It's good.
it wasn't like tear jerking.
Well, have you got any quickly? I forget some until it goes off the camera.
Yeah.
I'll know them all.
Yeah,
Nah,
it's always
fine.
like that though.
Listen, thank you so much, Jess.
Thanks for
Really
having me,
appreciate
babes.
it.
Appreciate you.
Hope you enjoyed this podcast, guys. Like she said, Daily Operation. I love that name, by the way. I think it's cool. Go and check it out on Instagram. And yeah, just take moments out in every day to realize what you got and to know what's going on in this world, because it's a sad time. Stay central.
And just because you're a girl doesn't mean you haven't got bigger balls than the rest of them.
And you don't shit.
The Central Club.